People have always been taught to recognize war in a very specific way. We expect it to begin with explosions, sirens, and dramatic headlines. History trained us to believe that wars start with a single clear event, an invasion, an attack, or a declaration. Because of that, we keep waiting for a loud moment to tell us that a global war has begun. But the world no longer works like that. Power today is not only measured in missiles and soldiers, it is measured in data, technology, money, and influence. Modern conflict does not rush in through the front door. It quietly enters through systems we depend on every day. Electricity networks, financial markets, communication platforms, and supply chains have all become weapons. When these systems are attacked, entire countries can be weakened without a single shot being fired. Cyber operations now have the ability to shut down cities in seconds. Financial pressure can crash currencies and destroy economies from thousands of miles away. Information warfare can divide societies by turning citizens against each other, spreading fear, confusion, and distrust. Bide. None of this looks like traditional war, and that is exactly why it is so dangerous. The most effective wars are the ones people do not immediately recognize. That is why modern conflicts rarely come with formal declarations. Declaring war creates consequences. It triggers alliances, international laws, and public panic. Today's powerful nations prefer a different approach. They operate in the gray zone, using language that sounds harmless. They call attacks technical issues, security measures, or economic competition. But behind those soft words are real strategies designed to weaken opponents step by step. This is also why the world feels permanently unstable. Major powers are constantly testing each other. Military budgets are rising, intelligence operations are expanding, and strategic alliances are being reshaped. At the same time, leaders continue to speak about peace and stability. That contradiction is not accidental. It is part of the strategy. What makes this situation even more dangerous is how normal life continues. People go to work, scroll through their phones, watch videos, and plan their futures. There are no air raid sirens, no global emergency announcements. Because daily life feels familiar, many assume that peace still exists. History, however, tells a different story. The most destructive conflicts often begin during times when people believe life will continue as normal. In the modern era, the battlefield is no longer limited to land, sea, or air. It exists everywhere. It exists in digital space, in economic systems, and political narratives, and even in human psychology. When everything becomes a battlefield, war becomes constant, quiet, and difficult to define. This is why waiting for missiles to signal the beginning of World War III is a dangerous mistake. All missiles come at the final stage, not the first. Before that, nations work to weaken each other silently. They test defenses, manipulate information, disrupt economies, and prepare populations mentally for long-term conflict. By the time physical weapons are used, the outcome has often already been decided. The uncomfortable truth is that a world war does not need to be announced. It does not need to be loud. It does not need to look like the wars we remember from history books. It can begin quietly, slowly, and invisibly. And that raises the question we can no longer ignore. If modern war is silent, constant, and everywhere, how would we even know when World War III truly began? The most important thing to understand about modern global conflict is that it does not begin with violence. It begins with positioning. Long before any public crisis appears, powerful nations quietly move their pieces into place. Alliances are strengthened, supply routes are secured, technologies are restricted, and rivals are slowly surrounded, not with armies, but with pressure. This is why the current world feels like it is constantly preparing for something without ever admitting it. Look at how global power is organized today. The United States and its allies are not just protecting borders, they are protecting systems. Financial dominance, control over technology, and access to global trade routes matter more than physical territory. On the other side, rising powers understand this very well. Instead of challenging military strength directly, they focus on reducing dependence and creating alternative systems that weaken existing power structures. This silent competition is already shaping the world. Trade is no longer just trade, it is leverage. Countries that control critical resources, rare minerals, energy supplies, or manufacturing chains hold power far beyond their borders. By restricting access or shifting partnerships, they can force political decisions without firing a single shot. Sanctions have become one of the most effective modern weapons. Entire economies can be strangled slowly, creating internal unrest and instability that looks like a domestic problem, but is often driven by external pressure. At the same time, technology has become the center of modern warfare. Whoever controls advanced chips, artificial intelligence, satellites, and communication networks controls the future battlefield. This is why technology bans, export controls, and digital surveillance are expanding so rapidly. Nations are not just competing for innovation, they are competing for survival in a world where technology determines power. Cyber warfare plays a critical role in this silent conflict. Unlike traditional weapons, cyber tools allow states to attack without leaving clear fingerprints. Power grids, water systems, transportation networks, hospitals, and financial institutions can all be targeted remotely. These attacks often appear as accidents, system failures, or technical glitches. The public rarely sees them as acts of war, even when their impact is severe. This creates a dangerous advantage. A country can test an opponent's defenses repeatedly, gathering intelligence and causing damage without triggering a military response. The line between peace and war becomes blurred, and that uncertainty favors the aggressor. Another battlefield that often goes unnoticed is information. Control of narratives is now as important as control of territory. Social media platforms, news outlets, and online communities have become tools of influence. By shaping what people believe, fear, or ignore, states can weaken societies from the inside. Division, mistrust, and polarization are not accidental side effects. They are strategic outcomes. A divided society is easier to control and harder to defend. This is why misinformation campaigns focus less on convincing people of a single truth and more on making them doubt everything. When trust collapses, trust in institutions, trust in media, trust in each other, a country becomes vulnerable. Decisions slow down, unity disappears, and in times of crisis, hesitation can be fatal. What makes this even more dangerous is that these tactics do not feel like war to the average person. There are no soldiers on the streets, no visible enemy, life appears normal on the surface, but underneath, pressure is building. Systems are being tested, weaknesses are being mapped. History shows that great powers rarely collapse from direct attacks alone. They collapse when internal stress reaches a breaking point. Economic hardship, political division, and loss of confidence weaken a nation long before any external force delivers the final blow. This is why modern world conflict is not about winning battles, it is about shaping conditions. The goal is to ensure that when a crisis finally becomes visible, the opponent is already exhausted, divided, and unprepared. Another key element of this silent arms race is psychological preparation. Populations are slowly conditioned to accept instability as normal. Constant crises, warnings, and global tensions create fatigue. People become numb. When everything feels like an emergency, nothing truly feels urgent anymore. This makes societies less likely to react decisively when real danger appears. This is the environment in which a global conflict can grow unnoticed. The frightening reality is that the opening stages of a world war do not feel dramatic. They feel slow, confusing, and uncertain. And that uncertainty is exactly what allows the conflict to expand. The question is no longer whether nations are preparing for such a scenario. The real question is whether the world will recognize it before it is too late. One of the most misunderstood ideas about global conflict is the belief that major wars begin suddenly. In reality, they are the result of long processes that slowly remove every peaceful option. By the time violence becomes visible, diplomacy has already failed in silence. This is exactly how the current global situation is evolving. The world today is divided into power blocks that increasingly see each other not as competitors, but as threats. Trust between major powers has eroded to historic lows. Every move is interpreted through suspicion. Military exercises are seen as rehearsals. Economic decisions are seen as attacks. Even humanitarian actions are questioned for hidden motives. When trust disappears, miscalculation becomes inevitable. This is one of the greatest dangers of a silent global conflict. When communication breaks down, small incidents can spiral out of control. A cyber operation meant to send a warning can be interpreted as preparation for a larger attack. A military drill can be mistaken for mobilization. In such an environment, reaction times shorten and patience disappears. At the same time, proxy conflicts are becoming more common. Instead of fighting each other directly, major powers support opposing sides in regional wars. These conflicts act as testing grounds. Weapons are tested, tactics are refined, and responses are measured. Each proxy war pushes the world one step closer to a larger confrontation, while still allowing major players to deny direct responsibility. This strategy keeps the global conflict fragmented and confusing. To the public, these wars appear isolated, different regions, different causes, different headlines. But behind the scenes, the same powers are involved again and again, pushing their interest forward without ever declaring open war. Another critical factor is military modernization. Around the world, armed forces are not just growing larger. They're becoming more automated, faster, and more reliant on artificial intelligence. Decision-making timelines are shrinking. Systems designed to react instantly leave little room for human judgment. In a crisis, algorithms may respond before leaders fully understand what is happening. This creates a terrifying possibility. A future escalation could occur not because leaders choose war, but because systems react automatically to perceived threats. When machines are given authority in environments filled with mistrust and uncertainty, the risk of accidental conflict rises dramatically. Nuclear weapons add another layer of danger. While they are rarely discussed openly, they remain central to global power calculations. Deterrence relies on rational behavior and clear communication. But in a world defined by misinformation, cyber deception, and hidden operations, clarity is disappearing. If one side believes deterrence is failing, pressure to act first increases. This is why modern global conflict feels so unstable. It is not just about power. It is about fear. Fear of falling behind technologically, fear of losing influence, fear of being surrounded, fear of internal collapse. When fear drives strategy, patience becomes weakness and restraint feels like surrender. Meanwhile, the global population is caught in the middle. Most people sense that something is wrong, but they struggle to define it. News cycles move too fast, crises overlap, attention shifts constantly. This creates confusion and fatigue. People become overwhelmed and disengaged, focusing on personal survival rather than collective awareness. This disengagement is dangerous. A society that does not understand the nature of the conflict it is living in cannot respond effectively. Without understanding, there's no pressure for our accountability, no demand for long-term thinking, and no resistance to decisions that quietly move the world closer to disaster. History shows that the most devastating conflicts often occur when people believe that leaders are in control, that systems will prevent catastrophe, and that reason will prevail. Those beliefs have failed before. They can fail again. What makes the current moment unique is how interconnected everything has become. A crisis in one region can trigger consequences across the globe within hours. Financial markets react instantly. Supply chains break, energy prices spike, political unrest spreads. In such a tightly linked system, local instability quickly becomes global pressure. This interconnectedness means that World War III, if it fully emerges, will not feel like a single event. It will feel like a chain reaction. One crisis feeding another, each one making the next more likely. No clear beginning, no obvious point of return. And perhaps the most unsettling part is this. Many of the systems driving this silent conflict were created to increase stability. Global trade, advanced technology, rapid communication, and automation were meant to make war less likely. Instead, they have made conflict more complex, faster, and harder to control. The world is not sleepwalking toward disaster. It is moving forward with open eyes, but without a shared understanding of where it is headed. The silent phase of a global war is the most dangerous phase, because it feels manageable. It feels like something that can still be fixed later. But later often arrives faster than expected. If history teaches us anything, it is that wars are rarely recognized at the moment they truly begin. They are recognized when it is already too late to stop them. While the world's leaders quietly maneuver their strategies, ordinary people are already feeling the effects of this invisible war. Sanctions, trade wars, and global resource competition may seem like political issues, but they hit regular people the hardest. Fuel prices rise, essential goods become scarce, and job markets fluctuate. Countries engaged in economic warfare indirectly impact citizens worldwide. Families face rising costs of living, inflation spikes, and uncertainty about the future. Even if no bombs fall, the economy becomes a battlefield and ordinary people bear the brunt. Every device we use, phones, computers, banking systems, is part of the cyber battlefield. Critical infrastructure is a target, and while large-scale attacks may be rare, smaller breaches already disrupt daily life. Power outages, hacking of financial accounts, and leaks of sensitive personal data are increasingly common. This digital front affects millions of people, making cybersecurity a necessity rather than a luxury. Even something as simple as online banking or healthcare systems could be compromised in a global conflict scenario. Modern war doesn't only aim to destroy physically, it also targets minds. Disinformation campaigns, fake news, and political propaganda polarize societies and create mistrust. People may argue over false narratives, question the legitimacy of leaders, and feel constantly insecure. This psychological warfare subtly erodes social cohesion and makes it harder for societies to respond collectively to crises. Ordinary citizens become both victims and unknowing participants in this ongoing conflict. Although major powers avoid direct confrontation, proxy wars in remote regions can affect global stability. Refugee crises, supply chain disruptions, and regional instability ripple across the world. People in distant countries may feel these impacts indirectly, through rising commodity prices, disrupted trade, or humanitarian crises. Even if one isn't living in a war zone, the consequences of hidden wars are impossible to ignore in a connected world. While nations quietly prepare, ordinary people are increasingly encouraged or forced to consider emergency planning. Civil defense drills, cybersecurity practices, and awareness of global tensions are becoming part of modern life. Though these steps may seem minor, they reflect the reality that conflict is no longer confined to battlefields. The invisible war affects governments, economies, societies, and individuals alike. World War III may not resemble the wars of the past, but it is already shaping the planet. It is fought in boardrooms, cyberspace, markets, media, and behind closed doors. Its impact on ordinary people is subtle but significant. Rising costs, insecurity, digital vulnerabilities, and social polarization are all symptoms. Understanding these hidden battles is crucial. The sooner we recognize the reality of this ongoing war, the better we can adapt, protect ourselves, and navigate a world quietly moving toward conflict.